Hi, my name is Peter Mo, and I'm from Tourism Ireland's Nordic office in Copenhagen. Today we will be talking about tips for city breaks in Dublin and Belfast with Veera Bianca, travel writer and photographer. Veera was most recently in Dublin, but she has also been to Belfast, and she is keen to share best tips and highlights for a trip to either of the island's capitals. Now, Veera, thank you for joining us here today. Would you mind telling our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you. I'm very excited to be here. I think my biggest worry was remembering all the names of the really cool places that we went to on both of those trips. But yes, I've worked as a travel blogger basically for over a decade and like a tourism professional. So I also do consulting in the tourism industry. But on my Instagram these days, I also share a lot of like wellness and body positivity. So it's not only travel, but it was really fun after the long break of less traveling to also go to Dublin. And I've actually been to Dublin twice now and to Belfast once a few years ago. So
Nice.
I'm very excited to be here.
So you say you've been to Dublin twice then, but what's your favorite part about visiting Dublin?
Well, I think honestly, my absolute favorite thing is how convenient the city is. It's funny that I've been there twice, and the first time I somehow didn't realize that. I think the first time I was traveling so much in general, and we had just been to Northern Ireland, and I had just a couple of days to stay in Dublin. So I really didn't get the picture of what the city really is like. So now when I went back, I was like, wow, no one's ever told me that Dublin is this great. Like, do people know about this? Like, I think a lot of people think it's like, you go to London or you go to Dublin. It's kind of like maybe a similar thing, but Dublin is so convenient. It's like a big city in a very tiny size. So, like, everything is walking distance and it's really safe. And I loved how easy the destination is. I think that's like my number one thing.
That's lovely. I'm glad to hear that because Dublin is indeed a very walkable city. It's quite easy to get around. You don't need to try and take public transport. You can if you want. You can get taxis or whatever as well, but you can also just as well walk. Yeah, and I definitely recommend that.
Yeah, and I mean, when you walk, you always see more when you're in a new city. And I think I remember when we were at the hotel and then we were like, okay, let's find that restaurant that they recommended. I'm like putting it on the Google Maps and it's like, oh, it's 20 meters from here. Like when I'm saying convenient, a lot of the things were like literally less than 100 meters from where we were staying. I think the furthest place was the Guinness Storehouse, which was like 2 kilometers walk.
Yeah, that's also quite doable, and it's not
Yeah.
it's not a hard trek going around for 2 kilometers. I mean, it is if you have already walked a lot already, but if it's one of the first things you do, then that's very doable, and that also leaves you
Mm.
quite close to a lot of other great things to do in Dublin. But what would you recommend everyone try when they visit for the first time?
Ooh, do you want a list of things or a list of things or like the number one?
I mean, maybe
Don't
what
even
was
say.
your favorite thing to do other than just how walkable the city was, but then what else would you
Mm.
say?
I mean, I was actually really surprised about the Guinness Storehouse because
Yeah?
I'm a person who actually don't tell the Irish people, but I hate beer.
Oh, don't worry, I don't
I
like
think
it
that's
either.
ooh.
Oh yeah, I prefer cider.
And that's yeah, and that's why the first time I'm like, I'm not interested in going to the Guinness Storehouse, but then the second time around, I'm like, fine, I think it's something you've got to do when in Dublin. And it was really great. Like the whole experience is really, really cool. It's not like just a simple beer brewery or a museum. It's like everything combined. You get to do so many things. It's so interactive. It's so beautiful. And you can have great lunch there. And then I was like, I mean, when I'm here, I of course have to try the beer. Um, I have to admit I still didn't enjoy it, but there was this drink where you can have sparkling wine and Guinness beer. It sounds very weird, but it was great. So yeah, that whole experience really took me by surprise because I felt like that's such a cliche thing and that's really boring if you don't like beer. But now I'm like, no, you should all go there.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, the history of the place is quite fascinating, and it's a giant place, as in giant factory, and very, very nicely made, I have to say. And the tour itself, or the storehouse itself, when you go in, you can just experience all the layers. I think my favorite is probably the marketing because I worked in marketing, but experiencing how they came up with like the slogans they've used and the different characters they've used
Mm.
throughout the ages, which have never been shown here in Denmark where I'm at. So I thought that was great. and also just the history of how they actually brew the beer and how like how it's affected Dublin. It's quite fascinating.
Mm.
So definitely, yeah,
And I love how it's made so interactive. So it's not that you just go there and read like a boring history lesson or something like that. So that was really, and I was surprised on the program we were recommended to have kind of like 4 hours there. And I'm like, oh my God. But then it's like that 4 hours went so fast. So especially if you're a beer enthusiast, I don't know, you could spend the whole day there, I guess.
I think so, definitely, yeah. And did you go up to the gravity bar up at the top with the
We
views?
did
Like,
go.
yeah,
Yeah, it's really cool up there. I think if you have a fear of height, it might be a bit scary, but I don't have that, so I really enjoyed it. It was really busy though, so
yeah.
it can be really crowded there.
I
At
think
least when
probably a
we
good
went.
tip is to go early.
Maybe, yeah, we kind of finished with that, so maybe we should
Oh
have
no, I meant
started
as
with
in
that.
earlier in the day.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's what I mean. Like maybe we should have like because when we went there actually straight from the airport, we started with that and then went kind of from the first floor up and then finished at the gravity bar. So maybe we should have change that direction. But anyway, it was still a cool experience, and I think it's the views are really cool from up there.
Yeah, because
So
you can see all of Dublin basically from up there.
yeah, and I think it's also great to start with that because, like you said, it's only a 2 kilometer walk from kind of the city center, if that's what you call it there. But still, like we came straight from the airport to there, and then just kind of got to our hotel, so that was very convenient.
Now you said you've also been to Belfast, so what was your favorite part about visiting Belfast?
Okay, there was quite a few things I loved in Belfast. Well, like in Dublin, I could go on with the list, but I can't really figure out because I would say the gin tour, but then I'm continuing on the path of drinks. But I think that was a great way to also meet a lot of Irish people and really see what they say when they say that Irish people are very bubbly and open-minded and very, very friendly, which is very true. But then also, I was a fan of the Titanic, like fan on a level that's weird and disturbing when I was a kid. Like I was so obsessed with the Titanic, not just the movie, but I actually would read like a 300-page book on how the boat was built when I was like, I don't know, 14 or something. I don't know how old I was, but young. So when I got to visit the Titanic quarter, I think that was like for the kid in me, the biggest dream come true, like to actually go to Belfast and experience the beginning of Titanic. So that was a really big thing for me to experience.
Nice. It is a very, very moving experience, like very powerful. You see how everything is was made and how it impacted Belfast, and then you see how it was inside the ship, as in the recreations of the cabins and stuff. It's very powerful.
Yeah.
And then you get to the sinking, which is just
Yeah, and you have like the names of the passengers there and everything. And I think it was also interesting to actually learn how much the Titanic has to do with the history of Belfast. Because when you just like, watch the movie and get obsessed with the ship for some reason, um, you don't think of the connection to the city as much. So that was really interesting to learn. And I said I want to go back and actually stay at the Titanic Hotel. I don't remember if that's the name of it, but
it
they
is
have a
this
hotel
right
there.
next door, yeah. In the old drawing offices where they designed the Titanic.
Yeah, I know. So that was really cool. So next time I want to stay there as well.
I can definitely recommend, even if you just go and visit the Titanic Hotel, it's also just fantastic. They also do tours, and you can sit and eat in the drawing room where they where all the architect or not architects, the designers and engineers drew the Titanic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we did actually have lunch there. I almost forgot about that. That was a really cool space.
Yeah.
Don't remember what I ate, but I did remember enjoying the lunch
Well,
there.
that's good. That's good. So you mentioned that you did a gin tour. Can you tell me a bit about the gin
Yes.
tour? What was it like?
I loved the gin tour. I think it was actually the perfect way to see a little bit of Belfast because we kind of did a walking tour where we would visit like I think we visited at least 5 different pubs. We started from the oldest pub in Belfast and learned a little bit about the history of both gin but also the city. And we had a fun little group. Yeah, I just don't remember the names of places, but I remember we had a great time. We met a lot of local people as well when we went to a few of the different pubs. So we had like groups of Irish people like, "Hey, come take selfies with us and stay for a drink." And I'm like, this is really what they talk about when they say that the Irish people are very friendly and welcoming. So
Yeah,
it
then
was a great tour. I think the company was called Taste and Tour, and they organized a few different like themed walking tours for groups and for privates around Belfast.
I mean, that sounds like a very good introduction as well to just pub culture in Belfast.
Yeah, that was definitely a good introduction. And I think it was nice because they were quite different types of bars. I don't remember the names, but like we started from the oldest one and then we went to like a couple of very casual ones. And I think one of them was one where you have like a jazz singer in the corner. And that was like really cool because we were a group of people in different ages and everything. So there's not like one specific type of pub people would, just want to go to. So I think that was really
No.
cool.
Oh
And of
yeah, it's a
course,
very good way to also experience a bit more of the culture. So you wouldn't just get stuck in like someone's regular where they wouldn't necessarily talk to you or anything like that, or it wouldn't be your type of pub in terms of the drinks served or whatever. You got to try a
yeah.
variety of things. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, I think, and then we always tried like different local gins that were really good. Can't, anymore name a brand. I think this was 4 years ago when I went to Belfast or something, but definitely was one of the best things we did.
That's nice. I haven't done a pub tour of Belfast, but I might do it the next time I'm there. Yeah.
You should.
What else did you do on your trip to Dublin? What else did you visit?
In Dublin.
Yes.
Um, well, I think we did a lot of just walking kind of in the area because we stayed at the Nest. It was quite a new hotel. It
Yes,
was a
the
really
Nest. Yeah.
cool hotel. I absolutely loved it. I mean, the Nest kind of already tells that the rooms are a bit small, but they reminded me a little bit of my time when I lived in Hong Kong. Like you go to a hotel, you have a nice hotel, but you have a small room, but you have a big window, and it's just this perfect cozy nest. And it was this really trendy hotel. I can highly recommend it. But I think the location was so great. It was in the middle of everything, but still at a kind of a corner street, so it wasn't
Yeah.
busy there. So we walked around a lot, just kind of seeing things. But I think one thing that was interesting is that my memory from Dublin, both the first time and now this time, is that there's a lot of great vintage shopping. It's not that
Mm.
something I look for generally. And I was talking to a couple of local people. I'm like, you have a lot of great vintage shopping here. And they're like, do we? I don't know. I'm like, you do. Like, I feel like much more than in most cities, especially for being a smaller area, especially like the Temple Bar area. I feel like it's like a vintage store, vintage store, vintage store, but they're like really cool vintage stores. So I really recommend for, especially if that's like a thing, like your interest, to do vintage shopping. Like there's no place like Dublin. I did end up spending quite some money on Siopella. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but one of the stores that sell like higher end luxury fashion. And I found a really great Yves Saint Laurent bag
Ooh.
there. But also you have like local designers and yeah, just really good vintage shopping. And I think it's something nice to do, like walk around, drop for lunch somewhere and then go for more vintage shopping. And we did a fashion and food tour,
Oh,
which was
cool.
also like a walking tour. I'm not sure, was it like 4 hours or something? We had a local guide and just me and my friend who I was in Dublin with. And I did a food tour with the same company last year called Fab Food Trails. They're really fun. So this time we had a guide and we did a food and fashion tour. And it was really interesting because, again, you hang out with a local person, see a little bit of the city because you're walking around. And then we dropped in a few fashion stores to learn more about like local design. And
Yeah.
then we went to this great cheese shop and the seafood cafe for oysters and yeah, a lot of really, really great things. And then also got like extra tips from her, from our guide for like where else, to go for lunch and dinner and stuff. So I think we ate a lot of really good food on our trip in Dublin this time.
Nice. And did you? Yeah, I was gonna say, did you enjoy the food? But I mean, if you ate a lot of really good food, I'm counting on you enjoying them.
That is exactly. I think the seafood cafe, I actually went there in my first trip to Dublin, like maybe 4 years ago, and then again this time twice. Like the seafood cafe is my favorite. It's in the Temple Bar area, and you could go there for like lunch or dinner. I mean, of course, only if you like seafood. If you don't, then that's not your jam. But they have like great, really fresh local fish and oysters, which are so great in Ireland generally, and really good wine pairings. And just the whole restaurant is quite small, but it's so pretty and cozy. So that was definitely one of the highlights
I mean,
food wise.
I think I know what I saw on my lunch plans now for the next time I'm in Dublin. I don't think I've actually been there yet. Uh,
Oh, I highly, highly recommend that. I've been 3 times and I've only been to Dublin twice.
fair enough, fair enough. It's not only highly recommended. It's more or less a must for me at this point. Then
Mhm. Yeah, especially if you like seafood. And we had another great, there was two local people that we were talking to, both recommended to go to Rustic Stone for dinner. So we did go to Rustic Stone for dinner. I think it was a little bit of like Asian fusion situation. And usually I'm always a bit when they talk about fusion food. I find it boring. But that was super worth recommending. Really, really great. Also recommend to book a table, but we booked it like an hour earlier than we actually had the dinner. But yeah, that was really great.
fair enough. But speaking of must dos in Dublin, then did you visit Trinity College in the Book of Kells?
Oh yes, we did. We did have a tour there, which was pretty great. It was a short, I think it was a 40-minute tour, which is nice because I like to learn the history of places, but when we like spend 3 hours talking about that year, this person and that year, then I can't keep up. So I think the 40-minute tour was perfect to kind of get a little bit about the history
It was more
of the Trinity
digestible. It
College.
was easier to. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So it's nice to still learn something about, where you're visiting. So we did do a bit of a walking tour around the Trinity College, and then at the end we stopped at the Book of Kells, which is really worth seeing because especially the Book of Kells, I mean, I wish that I could be there like, all the people would go out and I could take photos there because it's a great place for that. But it's also very popular place to visit, but
of course. It is one of
it's
the
really
must visit places, I think, in Dublin. It's yeah.
yeah, but it's worth visiting for sure.
And then what else did you get up to when you did the trip?
The one must thing to do in Dublin, I guess, is the Temple Bar. I think it's always confusing because Temple Bar is an area, but Temple Bar is also the
The
bar
bar, yeah.
where people go to. So within the Temple Bar region or area, there is the Temple Bar, which is like the bar. What if you see photos of Dublin, you see photos of Temple Bar, which is this old red pub that everybody kind of visits. It's quite busy and crowded and there's loud music. So if that's your jam, it's definitely worth dropping in. But I think we mostly kind of looked it from the outside and checked it off the bucket list. It is really quite pretty to take photos and all that, and something you see when in Dublin. And of course, because the area already has a lot of shops and restaurants around it anyway, so it's worth walking around there. So that's quite fun. And then personally, I don't know if a lot of people do that, but I really enjoy the Stephens Park or the
Oh
Stephens
yes,
Green.
St. Stephen's Green, yeah.
Yeah, Stephen's Green. I think I got lost there accidentally the first time. You know what happened to me the first time at that park? I was wearing a hat and I was just strolling around on my own and I feel this blob on my head and I'm like that felt weird. What was that? And I'm trying to shake my head and I don't know. And then I take my camera out and I see there's a pigeon on my head just hanging around and I try to move my head. The pigeon moves to the other side of the hat and the other side of the hat and I literally walk around the park for 20 minutes with a pigeon on my head and there's a group of German tourists that start taking photos of me, and they probably tell stories of the crazy Irish pigeon lady to their friends.
But just so everyone knows, it's not a crazy Irish pigeon lady.
It was me,
It's just a bewildered
the
tourist from
crazy
Finland.
Finnish lady. So yeah, this time there were no pigeons, but I also didn't wear a hat, so they didn't land on me. But I think it's just a nice place to like if there's a nice weather, take a cappuccino to go and just walk around and
It's a
see if
nice
you spot the
it's
pigeon
it's
lady.
it's a nice break at least when you like I like to go to parks when I visit, a city. It's nice to just step away from it all and enjoy some well,
Mm,
if you're in the right season, then some greenery. Otherwise, some autumn colors or maybe a few buds in the spring, like stuff
yeah.
starting to grow, sprouting. It's always nice. It's kind of a breath of fresh air in the middle of a big city.
Yeah, it is. It's really nice. And I think now it's kind of the season's changing. I think autumn comes there a bit later than here. So the leaves were still quite green when we did visit there, but it was really nice. Nice area.
Nice.
And I think just generally like Dublin is great for like even a short trip, do some shopping and eat good food, maybe enjoy a bit of the pub culture and go out for a night and do a bit of the culture And then actually, one thing that was also one of my favorite things related to the Guinness Storehouse in the beginning, we near the Guinness Storehouse, there's a Roe and Co whiskey distillery,
Yeah, very true. Yeah,
which we did also visit. It's good to combine it with the Guinness Storehouse because they are very close to each other.
yeah,
And it's so much worth visiting. Like we did a tour, which is especially if you're at all interested in whiskey, the tour is definitely worth doing. We had a great guide. She was telling us all about the history of generally Irish whiskey, but also the Rowan Co company. But the way it's different to your maybe average whiskey distillery. I did visit Bushmills in Northern Ireland,
yeah.
which was really interesting too. But the Rowan Co is very like modern and hip and trendy.
Mm,
So the vibe is very different to what would you would expect from like a whiskey distillery.
yeah,
It's definitely more trendy. And if you don't do a tour there, I think it's still worth staying for a drink because they have like a bar downstairs, like a cocktail bar, and their cocktails are really out of this world. They're very special. So I think that was something worth visiting if you are around the Guinness Storehouse.
definitely. I mean, the Rowan Co whiskey is also made to be a whiskey that can be enjoyed by itself, but also specifically that it can be used in cocktails. It's made for both. Because I've also been on that
It's quite
tour.
an easy one. Yeah, you
Yeah,
have.
yeah,
It's really fun. And I'm not even exaggerating when I say that it became my favorite whiskey. It's really nice.
yeah.
Their I don't remember, was it 108 or some, no, forget the numbers, but their basic basic whiskey that they have is I had to buy some that I have now in the kitchen.
Nice. And are you gonna drink it with as a cocktail or as a plain by itself?
I think plain by itself. That's
Really
how I
nice.
like to do it more, yes. Especially that one. I want to have all my friends to taste it, especially the ones who say they don't like whiskey. I'm like, you have to try this one though.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I liked it
Yeah.
too. I preferred it in the cocktail form, but
Mm,
it's me. I like cocktails.
yeah. I mean, I do too, especially the ones they made there. They were so great. They were quite special. Like, you have your old classics, but they also had their own really cool, I don't remember exactly like which we had, but very special combinations and really good
Yeah.
cocktails. So if I would be able to make them as good as they did, then sure, I would be enjoying them here. But
Fair point.
yeah,
Fair
don't
point.
have the skills for it.
I mean, if you're also just for information here, if you're also just more in, so that's a very modern and nice place. But if you're more into, let's say, a more classic distillery, you can go to Bushmills in Northern Ireland, for example. But you also have Jameson in just actually not very far. I think 500 meters away. So we have
Yeah.
there's I think 3 or 4 distilleries in Dublin, and they're all very 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 close to one another in the same area as Guinness. So you can
Mm.
try a variety of different types of whiskies there. And if you don't know which one you want to try, a good tip is always just to go to a bar and before you decide and have a taste of the different ones, and then you can see which one you like
Mm.
the most and go visit that one.
And if you're going to visit more of them, I really recommend having lunch at the Guinness Storehouse. They do heavy Irish lunch, and you might need that between all the tastings.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's a good point. Yeah, it's a very good point. Or split it between more days.
Or that.
So, moving back to Belfast, do you remember what you did there?
From Belfast, because I think the main things we did was kind of walk around the city to learn about it. We did the gin tour and then the Titanic Quarter, which was the highlight. But then we did more like a nature tour from there. So we did like the Giant's Causeway
Oh,
day tour, which I think you can also do from Dublin, but then it's probably,
it's a bit farther. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. But we did that for like one day, and that was really amazing. Like the nature in Ireland, of course, when you're on a city trip, but I think it's great to combine that. Like do a city break. If you have one extra day, go out into the nature then. I think
yeah.
that's for both Belfast and Dublin what I would recommend to do.
Definitely. I mean, the landscape in Northern Ireland specifically is also just incredibly beautiful.
Yeah, it's really cool. And we did a tour with the Giant Tours. We had a
Yeah,
great guide who owned the company, and it was focused on Game of Thrones, something I've never watched, to be honest. So it was still like the tour was really amazing. I'm sure it would be even more amazing if the show is something you watch, but I mean, the landscape is still really out of this world. And so it was a great experience to see all the coastal areas of Northern Ireland.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the reason, well, I actually know the tour you're with. It's with Flip. He's super nice.
Yes, he's a great guy.
He really is. Yeah, Northern Ireland. Yeah, it is beautiful, and you can really tell why it was used in if you've seen the series, why it was used in Game of Thrones, because it is just a stunning landscape, and it's definitely worth
Mm.
visiting. Yeah, perfect. What would you recommend everyone try when they visit for the first time, just in Ireland?
Ooh, generally in Ireland. I mean, you have to get to know the local culture, whether it's by, going for a night out or booking yourself any kind of a walking tour. I think the walking tours were both in Belfast and Dublin for me the best way to get to know the local culture a bit and also
Yeah,
the area a bit more. So I think like both when we did the gin tour and then the fashion and food tour, something like that I think is great to have something to do and learn about where you are.
yeah, because you take it at a slow pace, as to say, because you're walking and you can really have time to enjoy the sights and sounds, and yeah, I get it. And you can ask
Yeah.
your guide and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think when you have like a local guide, it's always like you learn something extra about the destination and how it is to live there and what are the locals' favorite places. So I usually try to use that tour to also get some insider tips. But then I think the third thing is either whether you like whiskey, gin, or beer, but one of those things is very Irish thing to do, and I think it's really fun, not just for the drinking part, but just for the learning again more about the culture. And maybe if it's like a group tour and you're traveling alone, I travel alone a lot, so then it's fun to do like a tour with a group, and then spend
Meet
an
some new
evening
people.
drinking gin and tonics, and then you'll become friends with them and the Irish people. So yeah, I
That
think
is a
that
very good tip. And do you have
yeah.
any final tips for anyone wanting to go on an Irish city break? Or
I think not so much a tip. I just want to really encourage people to do so because it really surprised me that you can really see, for example, Dublin, you can see a lot of it in just a few days. So, like, let's say you would do like a weekend trip from Helsinki or Stockholm or Copenhagen to, let's say, Dublin or London, or for example, then like for a weekend, you can do so much in Dublin because everything is so close. So, I feel like it is the perfect destination for a city break, like really much more perfect than I expected, even though I had been there once. But I think I just somehow, I don't know, I didn't realize how it worked. I think the first time my hotel, that was really nice. I stayed at the Ivy Garden the first
mhm.
time. It's a really cool hotel. I think they had just opened up. And it's also not a far walking distance, but it still like gives you a different perspective because you do have to walk from there a little bit to kind of the center where you have all your shops and restaurants, or most of them. But then now when we stayed at Wren, it was so in the heart of everything that it was like, okay, so everything I need is literally right here. So I just think that there's something I want to encourage. Like you can do so much even without really having a plan in Dublin when
Yeah.
you just walk around. Like, oh, that's a fun shop. Oh, there's oh in our Dublin they have great ice cream. I didn't know. I think it's an Irish thing. There are a lot of places where you have really good, fresh, creamy ice cream. So there's I think it's called 23
I think
and Murphy's,
yeah.
two different places. And they like make their ice cream fresh every single morning and they have like really cool flavors. I tried like Irish, not Irish dark bread or something like that, Irish black bread.
Okay,
I
yeah.
don't know, but a strange flavor, but that was really fantastic. So I think if you just kind of walk around, you'll end up just going to really cool places, trying cool things.
I mean, that sounds lovely. I could do with an ice cream, right now,
Yeah.
though. Yeah, but,
They say that Finnish people eat the most ice cream, though we have like a very cold weather, so it doesn't really add up. But I can eat ice cream in any weather, so
me
I
too.
ate a lot of ice cream in Dublin too.
Well, that's a good tip to do as well. Just enjoy it because it is. I think it's probably because it's Ireland is known for their butter and milk and cheese, so it makes sense that
Mm,
well, the ice cream is nice as well.
exactly. And there's that one cheese shop that I've been to twice now that I want to recommend everyone to go to because it also like if you have a few hours flight back home, like for me it's a 3 hour flight, They can actually pack some cheese for you that you can actually still take home. But I do have yeah, Sheridan's. Sheridan's is the wow, that's a lot of difficult words. Sheridan's is the cheese shop.
Yeah, Sheridan's
That
cheesemonger. Yeah.
yeah, wow, that was difficult to say. But that one is really great. We dropped in there on the food tour both the first time in Dublin and now on the fashion and food tour, and I can understand why. So then I always go there on the last day to get some cheese to take home, either as a souvenir, for friends and family, but also for myself.
Fair enough. That's a very good tip to do that as a finishing thing, I have to say. And what I'll do is I'll drop a link to all the places mentioned and all the shops as well. Not all the vintage shops. I don't know which ones they were.
Oh yeah, there's so many. I think the Siopala is the one where I did all the shopping.
Fair enough.
But then you have a lot more. But
Fair
some of
enough.
them are actually only open on a Saturday. I mean, you can still go do a lot of shopping any day, but there was quite a few where they would only be open on a Saturday. So if you're a big vintage fan, then I recommend definitely making sure you have a Saturday on your trip in Dublin.
That's a very good tip to include. But other than that, I just have to say thank you, Vera, for joining us today. And Vera, for anyone wanting to read more about your travels or tips, where can they find that?
They can find it both on the blog and Instagram, which is Veera Bianca, Veera with a double E. I do most of my content in Finnish, but there's a little. I think my first language is Finglish, so there's a little bit of mix, but it's more in Finnish, which is a weird language. But the Google
I was
translation
going to
thing
say
is
Google
starting.
Translate is your friend.
Yeah, it wasn't always. Finnish is weird enough to Google Translate to be confused, but I think it's slowly starting to speak our language.
Fair enough. Well, thank you very much for chatting with me here today, Vera.
Thank you for having me.